morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are at. It's SoulSaint here, and we got another video for you today. We are on the cusp of CVC coming up tomorrow, or pretty much in the next couple of hours. And I wanted to talk to you guys about some events that are going to be available from some shards, and I think this is very, very interesting considering what we got going on. So, one, if you're familiar with Raid and you're familiar with saving your shards or you're saving resources in general in preparation for something like CVC, it does add to the stigma of, wait, Shadow Legends is basically, Monday jitters. Pre-CVC jitters is always like kind of annoying. But there's even more incentive as to maybe how you use your resources going forward into this next couple of events. And I'm going to break it down. We're going to talk about some of the champions that got some updates. If you can see it, they did an announcement for it, as well as some things to look out for in the not-too-distant future. So, with that being said, let's get into it. As of today, going into Monday the 25th to Tuesday September 26th, they're going to be doing a 10x chance for summoning the following champions, which is going to be like Cardiel and Georgid Breaker, the Breaker from Void Shards, and then Korrigar, Deathbell, and Cavalex from Ancients, Sacreds, and Primal Shards. So keep that in mind. The amount of chances are like to get a legendary are pretty much the exact same. There's no difference whatsoever. However, if you wanted to get a specific legendary, if you so happen to strike gold, those chances are heightened for these particular champions. Now, are they worth going for? Well, in terms of meta, let's just start there. In terms of meta, George is one of the hardest hitting or one of the top end nukers of the game. He is a little squishy, but with the right protection, that dude's a monster. He's actually someone that I'm afraid to go against in arena because he pretty much just he ignores almost a little bit of everything, right? And in terms of being void, also he's very, very strong as a champion because he's not going to have any type of negative affinity matchups. So he's just a very strong champion in general. I think it's pretty much like an understatement. So, his A3, his Deadly Ballet allows you to just cook through almost literally anything that can protect the champion. And then, of course, he has some pretty high multipliers for some damage, as well as some way of survivability if you're going through a battle of attrition in some capacity, right? Now, mind you, unkillable, there are some champions that can kind of go through that are also meta. Like, for example, I could think of Rhodos as one of them. But regardless, just in general, as a way to keep your team alive or keep your George alive, he does have that as a part of, like, killing somebody with his A2. Pretty much top tier. For lack of better words, is one of the best champions in the game in terms of like nukers from PvP standpoint. Cardiel's another one here that's on the list. Cardiel, I want to say, is probably one of the ones who does, he fits into the mold of like a jack-of-all-trade type of champion, but he excels very well, almost to a point where it's comparable, if not maybe equal to some other legendaries when they're specifically focused on one thing. So let's break it down. His A1 has a heal, 7.5%, a 7.5% HP heal. This is stuff that's like on the same cusp of like what makes champions strong, like Doom Priest or maybe even Sylph from a passive standpoint. He has that built into his default A1. Also has a chance of placing a fear if the champion's from the Demon Spawn, Undead, or Knights Revenant faction. So we were talking about the Georgid, right? Demon Spawn, Duchess, and a bunch of different champions. If you were to use this guy from a PvP standpoint, he actually addressed a lot of it. UDK, very, very strong. I mean, they're all very reputable factions that are used pretty prominently within Raid. He has a way of being able to control them to some capacity, right? Scaling his heal is his damage up. Then, that's not all. He removes all debuffs on a 3-turn cooldown, then places a block debuff, revive on death, and it cannot be removed. So that revive on death is protected. That is very strong in terms of keeping your team alive as well as keeping your team going in the event they do get a little hiccup or to keep your team from taking too much control, crowd control. That's not all. He also comes in with a buff for increased crit rate, increased crit damage, so you're going to get your numbers up there, as well as the ability to constantly take your team and just throw them at the enemy. There's one champion that you want to target and try to see if you can lock out or kill and get them out of the picture. Maybe with that Georgid, Cardio will be like, yo, ally attack, we're going in. And he goes in with them, which is also very, very strong. In tandem with that, he also receives less damage from champions from those factions we were talking about earlier. He has a nice little pairing with Sissia Flame Tongue, which is also pretty good. She's a nice HP burn, weakened, decreased defense champion. And then he comes with a speed aura of 19%. So he's actually meta for some of the best teams or some of the best tune-ups for teams that are in relation to like some of the harder dungeons like Fire Knight hard. He's up there amongst the staple. He was actually one of the original meta champions when the hard dungeons came out. He's very, very strong there. He's pretty much useful everywhere. Hydra, Demon Lord, Doom Tower. I mean, that guy just does a little bit of everything, and he does it really, really well. Probably one of the most versatile champions and probably one of the most top-tier champions. I want to say he's probably one of the best, if not the best, in terms of contention of just being well-rounded to do everything. So, those champions are very noteworthy in terms of meta and being very viable. The next ones on the list are from the Ancients and Sacreds and Primal side. So it's very interesting that they're adding Primals to it, and I would be very cautious for those of you guys that are listening in right now. The main thing that I would say you want to watch out for is that Primal Shards in general, the main thing that's incentivizing for them is the fact that you're exposed to being able to get mythical champions. But with these type of events that we're getting, the last 2x that was related to Primal, as well as this 10x that's kind of related to Primals, they don't really increase the chances for mythic champions. So I will say, if you care about mythic champions, you want to get your hands on a mythic champion, your best bet right now is just to wait and just stockpile until the inevitable opportunity where they're going to maybe consider doing a 2x for chance drop rate for specifically mythic champions. And I think at that point, that's when you unload and you start doing it. But I would stockpile for now. Primal Shards are kind of rough because like they have a really, really oversaturated pool of like champions from like the rarity standpoint. You still get rares, and that's very disheartening. So I would try to find your best way of eliminating that portion of the applicable pool that you would get from that shard to kind of better get a higher inside. So like your legendary / primal shards would be like, or primal champions, or mythical champions. Getting those would be a little bit more idealistic for you. So try to wait for those if I would recommend it. Now, with that being said, Core Guard Death Bell, I believe it has turn meter boost, ally protection, maybe a little bit of healing built into it. A well-rounded support champion, maybe ideal for like go second style teams in arena, or if you're doing traditional teams in the sense maybe you don't have that unkillable unlocked. Ally protection is pretty much one of the other go-to ways to be able to keep your team alive and to go the distance so that they get their damage over the long course of a fight, right? Calvalex, believe it or not only being a pretty decent poisoner for damage as well as enemy max HP, his passive is super, super ideal in the sense that one of the meta, if we're going to talk about it, type of styles of being able to hyper farm or speed farm, in a sense, that's where we kind of define meta when it comes to PvE, speed farming. There's a lot of teams that you'll see that have 2 Calvalexes and then a poison exploder like maybe Eleanor or I believe there's one other one like Xavier, for example. Those champions in particular don't work without someone like the likeness of Calvalex. So I actually already have 2 of them myself, so it's less incentivizing for me to go for it. But if I had like a Xavier or another champion that has poison explosions included into it, maybe slap 2 Calvalexes together with a resetter, and you have like that engine to just like boom, 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 boom. You're moving on to the next stage, and it's just rinse and repeat nonstop. Very, very strong champion in terms of that speed efficiency. Not bad in other scenarios where you have maybe some any max HP application that you can use. Now, as for the day of going into Tuesday, which is actually on the 26th, you'll have a chance to get 2 other additional champions, which are going to be just as obnoxious. This is all meta champions. So you got Harm on the way. We did a breakdown on her before in the past. Very, very strong champion. Actually, one of the hardest the strongest, defensive nukers in the game right now because of their being able to counter the meta as well as that pass is just nasty. Demon Slayer is just ridiculous. So ignore percent defense effects are reduced, as well as the fact that she kind of supersedes any demon spawn faction that's in play, which is pretty much a lot of the meta when it comes to PvP at the moment. And then on top of that too, speaking of Skinwalkers, since we got like the fusion as well as a whole bunch of other things going on, Leorius is getting a chance to slam and get his chance into the sun. So that's 2 other additional champions that are pretty high end, that are really good for their area of focus, not only in PvP, just in general. They're really, really strong nuker champions. Now, going into Wednesday, we also have another set of champions that are going to be just as substantial and in a different type of way. Grisor is going to be one, our Ogren, pretty much, I like to call him our blob juggernaut if you're familiar with Marvel Comics. Provoker, enemy max HP hitter, healer, shielder, the whole 9 yards. He has so much going for himself. One of the more stronger champions inside Hydra. I love seeing. He may be valuable in other areas of the game too, to be honest with you, but in particular, I do see a lot of, whenever I see Grisor, I think of Hydra kind of content. And then, speaking of a champion that's like pretty much great everywhere, you got the big Newt himself. If you want to complete... Never mind. If you want to get your other nut, a great way to do it would be to consider getting him this Wednesday, which is going to be day 2 of CVC. You're going to have a chance to get him any max HP hitter, triple hit. So that's 310%, so you can pretty much lock out weaken, decrease attack with a counterattack built into it for his kit. A freeze champion, really, really top tier for basically everything Fire Knight, as well as pretty much a boss killer everywhere in the game. So this guy's top tier. Now, with that being said, we got to understand and remember that although we are in a CVC window when this event is, this 10x is going to go live, so you get value from a shard standpoint. when pooling, so you get points for CVC for getting champions, especially if they're new champions. And then, of course, having more champions to farm up and level up during that same period. You know, you may be generating food amongst some of those, you know, dupe rares or some of that you may get around the lines. But the chance to get them does not change. So I would say that depending on where you are, we talk about this all the time in my live stream at Twitch, twitch.tv/SoulSaint with a 0 if you haven't seen it. There's a lot of conversation that talks about when's the right time to pull. And a lot of times the best way I describe it to a lot of players from different ranges of the game is that when you're early game, your best bet to get the bang for your buck from a shard is during 2x, right? So you're getting, you know, even if you do get epics, you're getting you're getting a high quantity of epics. So epics should be technically, on a technicality basis, should be better than a rare. And then, of course, legendaries should be better than an epic. So you want to give your best chance to get the higher inside of quality for rarity champions through 2x versus, you know, just getting a bunch of rares because, you know, there's no chance rating increase. There's no event that's, you know, quantifying it, right? Then, in the same note, as you're progressing in the game, you become less dependent on getting any type of rare or any type of epic or any type of legendary, and now you're looking for more specific type of legendaries, right? You're looking for certain types. And then as you progress past that, when you start getting closer towards late game and end game, you're looking for specific champions because they're meta or they're because they provide something that nothing else can be done in terms of like champion kit. So 10x has become a lot more reasonably, and this is the way I'm going to say this, is going to be a lot more reasonably to like justifiable to go for when you're that far progressed. Like your account has a lot of good champions and you pretty much don't need for anything in terms of like, you know, I need specific champions to be able to achieve certain content. Instead, I'm looking to take my team and elevate to the next level by having the most meta champion that's related to it. And, you know, even then you want to understand why those champions are meta, right? Because they do what they do the best. So you're looking to improve that quality in that standpoint. And that's when it becomes maybe rationalization wise, you may be like, okay, I can spare a couple, you know, for my pocket. I'm close to Mercy. That's another thing too I would consider. If you're very close to Mercy and you really want a Georgia, you really want a Cardiel, more often than not, I would say that like if your accounts progress well enough to where those void shards won't impact you negatively if you were not to use them during a 2x, for example, then yeah, you can go for it for sure. That's my rationale, and that can change. It all defines based off of like the context of where progression is at in the game, because the goalpost with every new implementation of like new content, you know, like a new raid, a new dungeon, a new something to do, not something to farm, that goalpost can move and shift. You know, we saw that with blessings. We saw that with oiling up gear. Like that moved the goalpost ever so slightly further from where you were originally, you know, saw that post at. So, as always, the the right time to when to farm or when to pull shards, for example, also can change and adapt based on, you know, your needs of the game. So always keep that in mind, and as always, use the best decision or make the best decision that's suitable for your account at the end of the day. Now, I hope this all finds you guys well. I'm pretty much kind of sad to say that we're on standby now. We're gonna just start stockpiling, doing whatever we can to just gather some extra resources, and then, you know, get ready for CVC. So when it comes, we can hit the ball and get it rolling, and hopefully get some big wins. Now, I did want to show you something else too as well in terms of like regular clan rewards at tier 6. They still have like legendary artifacts as well as some legendary tombs and whatnot. It's not bad. For winning for personal rewards, it's the same thing. This one isn't as aggressive as the most previous CVC PR we had, where they were also introducing mythical gear, so keep that in mind. But nevertheless, you know, legendary gear and pieces to work with are never a bad thing. So I definitely want to encourage you guys to make the best decision. Make sure you're communicating within your clan. You know, are we making a big push today to try to win? Are we calling it quits after a certain point? You know, it's always important to have communication, right? That's key. And with that being said, I hope you guys all enjoy your day, and always remember, stay ascended.